just you wait, just you wait. It goes wrong, comes back down, just you wait. You won't listen to sound advice, but honey, I'm not the one who lies. I'll be over here asleep while you'll be in the street of fate you're destined to reap. You never care about my tears, you're unaware, but just you wait, just you wait. It goes round, crashes down, just you wait. Oh, just you wait, just you wait. It goes round, crashes down, just you wait.
You should be my safe place, but your words, they always seem to cut. You say that you love me, you mean that you love me, but I try to be a good daughter, show that respect to my father. I feel the pain of my mother, I feel unseen by my brother. I feel the weight of my culture, so on my wounds with a suture. Made of impossible features, the limits you put on us women are brutal. They wanna know if I'm married, they wanna choose what I'm wearing. I wanna be with whoever I want, and I don't give a fuck. Yeah, you heard me, I'm swearing. I waited so long just to tell you, it took me 3 years, it was hell. And now that you know I'm in love with a girl, you accuse me of being unwell? You say that you love me, but you tryna tell me who. You may be my family, but I'm gonna have to set you free. You should be my safe place, but your words, they always seem to cut. You say that you love me, you mean that you love me, but epic best, epic best, epic best, epic I think your hair's too short for you. You dress like a man, what is wrong with you? It's dangerous what you're attracted to. You need to come home, we'll take care of you. Newsflash, you're gaslighting. FYI, not inviting. Why would I give up the person I am for the fantasy of reuniting? How about you give up oppression? What is it with your obsession? Family isn't a reason for treason against my self-expression. The damage you're doing is major. It started when I was only a teenager. I'm asking you now, and I do not get how. Will you stop putting my life in danger? You say that you love me, but you tryna tell me who. You may be my family, but I'm gonna have to set you free. You should be my safe place, but your words, they always seem to cut. You say that you love me, you mean that you love me, but epic best.
Hey, let's get started. Kia ora and welcome to VUWSA's 2023 Wellington Central Debate. My name's Ethan, I'm the news co-editor at Salient and I'll be moderating today. We have Lots of juicy questions lined up for the candidates. These were produced in collaboration with Generation Zero and Voices for Aroha. So shout out to these organisations as well as VUWSA for putting this on today. We also have audience questions at the end. It's my favourite part, so scan this QR code or take a picture and you can upload questions throughout the debate. I also want to emphasise that this is a debate, not a panel, so I encourage the candidates to get a bit riled up. Don't talk over each other too much, but feel free to have a go. We'll have right of reply after each segment so you can scrap each other a little bit. And the same goes for the audience. Get feral, get raucous. We want to hear what you have to say. I encourage you to heckle, cheer, boo. These people are here to get your votes. They want to represent you in Parliament, so make your voices heard and don't be afraid to get a bit raucous. In saying that, don't be abusive. Any hateful or disrespectful language won't be tolerated. That's just cringe, don't do that. We also have a timekeeper, Catherine, shout out. They'll ring the bell when your time's up. You'll get like 45 seconds to answer most of the questions. If you keep talking, I won't be afraid to cut you off. So yeah, keep it snappy, we only have an hour. Okay, to start off, and we'll start with Scott, because he's closest, you each get 45 seconds to introduce yourself, what party you're standing for, and why you should be the MP of Wellington Central.
Can you hear me now? Kia ora koutou, Scott Sheeran, National Party candidate for Wellington Central. I've got 3 key messages for you. The first one is that the most important thing for you in your life is your first opportunity out of university. National Party wants to give you great opportunities so that you'll stay in New Zealand. Second one, prudent fiscal management and to stop intergenerational debt. If you look at things in this country, we've now got massive debts. We're building up things we can't pay for. The council's about to collapse under its debt. We need to spend wisely for you so that you don't have to carry that debt. The final thing is we need to invest in social investment to make sure that we can really help people who are not able to access healthcare, who are struggling in our society today. Thank you.
Thank you. Tamatha.
Kia ora koutou, my name is Tamatha Paul. I'm the Green Party candidate for Wellington Central. At the moment, we are running the biggest grassroots green campaign ever in Aotearoa, and we are on track to win Wellington Central. The big thing that I want to communicate to you today is that a vote for the Greens means a universal student income. It means getting rid of degrading means testing. It means that you will have $350 in your pocket every single week, including postgrad students. And we're going to pay for that by taxing the richest 0.7% in this country.
It won't work, Tam.
We're standing for rent controls, and we're standing for rental warrant of fitness, and for climate action. So ngā mihi, looking forward to a juicy debate.
G'day, Taylor Arneil, New Zealand First candidate for Wellington Central. First and foremost, thank you for having me here. Always great to be back at Vic, and thank you, Salient, for hosting Winston the other day for an interview. And the class of Dr. Atiati hosting Winston too. And for New Zealand First, we got 2 big policies for young people. The first is one that the Greens have, funnily enough, taken off us, which is a universal student allowance, something that we've stood for 30 years. And the second one is a university student allowance pay-back scheme, so that every year that you work down here after you're finished studying in your field of study, 1 year of your student loan gets written off, so that that massive debt that you have at the end of study actually looks realistic, and that you may not have it in a few years' time. So those are our 2 big principles for young people. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Mexico toku whenua, ko Natalia toku ingua. I am the deputy leader and the Wellington Central candidate for the Opportunities Party, and I am here standing in favor of a collaborative style of politics and not a combative style of politics, which I think small parties can do. I don't think any of the issues we are facing are going to be solved by one party, one term, one candidate, and we need parties like the Opportunities Party that can bridge the ideologies, the ideas, and the policies. So what I want to encourage you to do on the 14th of October is give your party vote to top, and then vote for whatever electorate candidate aligns with your values, and use the MMP voting system to the best of our capacities, which is giving different votes to different people for different reasons. We don't need to give 2 ticks to one party.
Namihi nui kia koto katoa. My name is Ibrahim Omer. I'm the Labour Party candidate for Wellington Central. 10 years ago, in September 2013, I stood up here as a cleaner and challenged the politicians, local politicians, asking for living wage for all low-paid workers. 10 years on, I'm standing here as a candidate for Wellington Central because we are living in a best city. This city gave me so much. I came as a cleaner with nothing. It made me who I am today, and I am standing in front of you as a candidate. But we do have a lot of issues with housing, infrastructure, water infrastructure, and also transport. We have to fix these things because we want a city that young people come and thrive. Wellington City is what it is because of students, but we need to build more houses.
Okay, and just a note, Catherine's going to do a wee one ding of the bell when you've got 10 seconds left, and then go crazy once you've gone over your time, and then I'll cut you off. So, first round. This is a wee quick fire to see how relatable you are, how in touch you are with the student population. So the first question, and we'll start with Ibrahim, or actually maybe we just say who knows it first, so first in, first served, but I do want you all to answer. What is the average rent for a room in a flat in Wellington Central?
250.
280.
290.
250?
About 300.
250.
That's how much I pay.
What is the weekly study link student loan living costs?
270?
260.
240.
I actually don't know, but in the 230 camp, I guess.
All I know is over 200.
It's $302, but that's debt, so make it make sense. It doesn't really matter. Do you own a house or do you rent? If you own a house, how many? And we'll start with Scott and go down.
Yes, 2.
No, I'm a renter.
Nope, I rent.
I own my house, one.
I'm one of the handful MPs that who rent.
Okay, and sort of building off that, are you a landlord? We'll start with Ibrahim.
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not.
No.
No.
Yes.
Okay. Some cheers for being a landlord. Wow, good on you. Anyone have any right of reply to anything said? I know, Tam, you were shaking your head a little bit in the introductions there when there were some council comments thrown around.
Oh, I don't know. It just sounds like my good friend Scott wants to stand for council every time he goes off about council all the time, about the debt that the city is facing, which is true because of underinvestment from successive National and Labour governments and from Conservative politicians around the city council table who kept rates artificially low so that they could get re-elected again. But instead, he wants to blame our progressive city council, led by our mayor, Tory Whānau, for investing in decarbonising our city, getting us ready for climate change, and also investing in fixing the pipes, building more affordable and public housing, and making our city a safer place to be.
We will talk about housing. Scott.
Seriously, it's rhetoric, it's nonsense, it's not matched by. Read the New Zealand Herald article that says our council is going to collapse under debt. That's poor decision making. You know what I think is poor decision making?
Because of the reasons I just said.
Let me finish, Tam. Hey, I let you talk. Come on, chill. So last year the council decided to spend $330 million on cycleways, right? Yeah, but wait for it. So start of this year, the council was asked to spend $10 million fixing pipes, and they said no. And do you know what? People don't have water. We're going to have a water shortage. We're wasting 40% of our water. Businesses can't run because they don't have water. That's not good decision making. I'm sorry, it's just not. We've got to decide, we've got to build a country we can live in. We've got to live in this country and give you opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Lots of council chats.
You're welcome, Ethan. You're welcome.
You all mentioned housing, so we're going to move on to the housing round with the first question. What will you do to make rents more affordable to students? We'll start with Ibrahim.
Well, we all know that we are in housing crisis, and for the last few years, and this is worse when it comes to students, what is going to resolve the housing crisis that we are in? And the Labour government has made huge progress, and this is more housing building in Wellington, because Wellington is not blessed with a huge amount of land, but what we need to do is we need to build upward. So more housing, because Labour government has inherited housing crisis from the national government. We now, 1 in 10 houses in this country have been built by this government. 1 in 6 public houses have been built by this government, but Wellington is now having a share of this. We need to build more houses. We need to build more houses because supply is the only thing that's going to resolve the housing crisis we're in.
Thank you, Natalia.
So the Opportunities Party does have policies like the Teal Card, which a lot of you have heard me speak about, but in order to address the housing market, we need to reset a lot of the structural issues with property markets and tax and supporting young people. But the real value that TOP adds is making sure that we have a collaborative approach to the housing market. Like I said, one party won't solve the issues. A lot of things need to change. So the Teal Card will give young people free public transport, free healthcare, and a $5,000 saving boost. But we also need to reset the settings because addressing the symptoms won't address the cause. So we need to tax land, and we need to make sure that we are building more houses and lowering the cost of building supplies.
The first one for us is a universal student allowance so that you're able to afford your rents to begin with and so that you don't have to be going out and getting a part-time job just to try and make ends meet. And the other big one is when it comes down to building homes, that we continue to build them and we build them in the right place where there is that transport option so that you don't all have to congregate in 1 or 2 suburbs because those options do not exist, giving you the ability to live further out of the city if you choose to do so in an area that might be a bit cheaper or where there are new houses will help lower your rents. It's about building houses in the right place and that universal student allowance.
So you can trust me to be a hearty voice for housing in the city, as I have been over the last 4 years serving you as a city councillor. We've tripled the housing capacity in Wellington. We've built 200 affordable houses, and we will continue to do that. We need more public and affordable housing, but also we need rent controls. We need more transparency about who these landlords are in our city that are making us live in housing that makes us sick, that we're paying through the roof for. It's time for there to be a party that actually represents renters and actually stands up for us, because 1 in 3 New Zealanders are renters. I will be that voice. I will work with council, kāinga ora, community housing providers and developers to build thousands more public affordable housing here in Wellington, because it is the #1 issue.
So everyone here is actually, I assume, quite smart, and you know the difference between rhetoric versus reality and slogans versus delivery. You know your rents have gone up $250 a week. You know that there's a shortage in Wellington. You know that we're consenting at 1/3 of the rate of Auckland City and Wellington, also versus Christchurch as well. So we're not actually building very much. And so what National's going to do is we're also going to make sure, I mean, rates have gone up 12.4%, that's going to drive up your rents. So what does National do? We're going to talk to community housing providers to turbocharge the capital they have, operational expenditure. We've also spoken to private developers to incentivise them. So you won't get a 2-storied apartment in the middle of town, because it's going to be a tall apartment that people could live in. And you'll see the results. It won't be slogans.
Can we respond?
Yeah, go on, but be quick.
You're right. National did pull out of MDRS, and do you know what else the National-led ACT government want to do? They want to hold street referendums, and every new house has to have 70% support on every neighbourhood to build new houses. That will drive down density. It is NIMBYism gone mad, and that is what you get if you get a National-led government. Less houses.
Honestly, that's totally rubbish. And the changes in the national plan, because now you've opened that door. First of all, we'll provide a $1 billion fund to incentivise the council to build, because as I said, they're building really slow. Secondly, we'll open up greenfields. Thirdly, we will put in rules that will allow infrastructure investment, both for greenfields but in the city, because honestly, that's a big failure, that 2-storey apartment in the middle of the city. And the thing about density is about building in the right place, not in the wrong place.
Okay. Too much council chat. We're running for Parliament. Come on. Forget about council. Okay, second question. What would you do to make sure that rental properties are up to a safe and healthy standard? And we'll start with Scott and then go that way.
So first thing is we need to increase supply because at the moment we've got dwindling supply. That means that landlords have the power, and you don't want that. You want there to be lots of supply, and you want to be able to say to a landlord, I don't like your house, I'm going to go elsewhere. Secondly, we need to implement the standards. Clearly there are standards and they're not being implemented or watched. And I think we need to work with landlords as partners, not make them enemies, because this is not healthy for what we need for people. So I think that there's more of a partnership, there's more supply, and we can give you better options, more choices, and the prices will go down. Thanks.
How would you implement standards? The question was about...
Look, mate, I have to tell you the truth. Treasury said to the government, if you take away that deductibility, prices will rise for the people at the bottom. And you know what happened? People did. So what you just said...
This isn't about Treasury.
Look,
this is about rental standards.
That decision increased prices for poor people. Okay? That's what it did. That's it.
Okay. Let's just try to keep it on rental standards, safe, healthy homes. Tamatha, go ahead.
This from the guy that said he's going to listen to everyone. So we have a policy, in our first 100 days, we commit to looking into and implementing a rental warrant of fitness. I live in Arneil Valley in a damp, cold, mouldy flat. I've lived there for 4 years now, and I know that it's urgent. We are living in houses that are making us sick. We're getting things like pneumonia and rheumatic fever because of the quality of housing here in Wellington. So I commit to you that I will continue to stand up against landlords that want us to live in their crappy housing because it was built in a certain time. We need to demolish that. We need to build much more housing in the inner city so that we can jump on the bus and walk to where we need to go.
First and foremost, when New Zealand First was in government with Labour and the Greens and Supply and Confidence, we did support and pass the Healthy Home Standards Act because we did see that it was a good thing, and we did agree and believe that living in a mouldy, damp, bad house is not a rite of passage. It is a health hazard. Now, one of the biggest problems with it is actually the enforcement, but one of the key parts that we want to do is actually ensure that each and every single one of you know what your rights are when it comes down to issues with your landlord, know what the healthy home standards are and what you are entitled to, and so that when you go to a tenancy tribunal to get your rights, you know exactly what you have to do to get the tribunal to make that landlord make it a healthy home.
Thank you. Natalia, I saw some head shaking when the other candidates were speaking.
So practically from a government perspective, a register of landlords is very ineffective. It's a good idea in practice, but it would take so much money and effort, and it's a data privacy thing. It's a really impractical idea in implementation. I would like to suggest, and the opportunities would like to suggest, that in principle, we do need to work in partnership with landlords. We already have a lot of formal mechanisms, like the Healthy Home Standards, that, like Taylor said, is really difficult to enforce at a national level. So a lot of the solutions for these houses and for the implementation of these standards is decentralizing the decisions and enforcing and empowering the councils to work with renters and work with landlords. The government, central government, is not well placed to address this problem, especially one single party on their own, unless we're going to work together.
Ibrahim.
Our renting market is really a mess, and we need to do better than this. I've got a few things that the Labour government has done so far. We limited rent increase to once a year. We're making sure all the homes are healthy. We made renting fee, we banned unfair letting fees, and we also stopped no-cause terminations. Now most of these policies are now going to be reversed by the National Party, and which is going to take us back to the mess that we were in before 2017. So we can do better than this.
Thank you.
Just saying the rental market was actually a lot better in 2017 than now.
Okay, good on you. We've got, we're moving on to cost of living, but I noticed, Ibrahim, you have some notes. I'm not keen on the candidates having notes. It's not open book. Tam, I also noticed you've got some written on your hand, which is a bit cheeky. So maybe if we could put the notes away, have the courage of your convictions. Just good on you. Okay. Cost of living. How will your party help alleviate the cost of living pressures that students are facing in Wellington? And we'll start with Ibrahim.
Can you repeat the question? Because I was busy putting the notes away.
Cost of living. How are you going to help the cost of living for students?
So now we have been campaigning for the last 4 or 5 months, and the biggest topic now is cost of living. And it's even worse when it comes to young people, students. So the government has taken some steps. You would have seen the have public transport for under 25 is making a huge difference. I think eventually we need to make it universal. And the dental care free for under 30s, it's huge. And we need to be taking other steps. The 10-point plan by the Labour government is helping people. But I think that this is, the cost of living is getting out of touch, and that's why the government is, Chris Hipkins from day one, he made it clear that it's gonna be his top priority. It's our top priority, and we're working on it.
So we think the teal card is a great idea. It's a play off the gold card. It's free public transport, free health, and $5,000 saving boost for people under 30. And what I really like about the Opportunities Party is that we are still with our sights on the UBI. We've just pushed it out because we recognize that we can't afford it at the moment, but we still think that that is an ideology worth chasing that our tax system will support. The other thing that the Opportunities will do is work with whatever government is in power to make sure that they're not forgetting about young people and holding them accountable and making sure that they are considering the underrepresented groups in any of the decisions. If polls are to be right, that is what will happen.
The big main policy that New Zealand First has to lower the cost of living is to remove GST from food, not just processed food, all food items, and to ensure that those savings go into your pockets and that they do not just inflate the profit margins of supermarkets, to work with expert groups to actually ensure that when we do remove it, the food prices do go down and you end up saving more money. Because at the end of the day, when I was a student, the biggest cost and problem that I had when I was budgeting everything was food. And I can tell you right now, it was a bloody good week when I got to buy some fresh veggies that didn't come in a bag from the freezer.
Taylor, Winston Peters told me that you guys have scrapped that policy. He said you can't afford it anymore.
Not scrapped it, but the big one is first adjust income tax brackets and then do the GST on food.
Okay.
So for us, it's about having a really big conversation and making action on taxing multimillionaires and billionaires who are paying half the effective tax rate of the rest of middle and lower income New Zealanders. We need to tax the rich. A majority of New Zealanders support a wealth tax of some kind. We've put that forward. We've got it fully costed and evidence-based. We will tax the richest 0.7% of New Zealanders, and that will mean that there will be a universal student income, so every single one of you will have a universal student income, which means that you can put that towards your rent. When I'm talking to students, the biggest issue is rent, so we're going to cap rents at 3% per year, and that is going to make a big difference in the lives of students to be able to afford to live, because student poverty is not a rite of passage.
So, Greens say we'll give you more money, we'll give you more money, we'll give you more money. You see what that happened in the council. The council's collapsing under its debt.
No more council
Cost
talk.
of living, the biggest thing is inflation. And, National's got a 5-point plan on inflation. We can attack it. A lot of it's been generated by government. Our net core crown debt's gone from 5 billion to 80 billion. That's how much we've spent. But I think the bigger issue for everyone in this room is we need to raise your incomes in future, because we're becoming a poor country amongst OECD countries. We have the worst growth in Asia Pacific. We're 156 on a list of 157 for growing our economy, behind, I think it's Equatorial Guinea, which is a dictatorship. We need to create a better future for you so that you don't feel poor, and we have more taxes for social services in this country.
Ethan, can I just say?
Yep, very quickly.
I really find it very insulting comparing New Zealand to one of the third world countries. We are the first, we are one of the developed countries, and it just baffles me. The other thing is inflation. Inflation is almost in a way down. It's under control. The economy is growing. It's projected to grow by 2.6. I think all these things are just excuses. We need to be discussing policies. That's actually cost of living is the current issue. The government has done a good job in terms of putting inflation under control. It's projected to be 1 to 3% by the end of the year in 2024. So, the inflation, all these things, it's just an excuse.
So I've got to say something about that.
Very quickly.
Look, you guys have lived the last 6 years under Labour Greens leadership, locally and centrally. I don't think you're going to sit there and say to me that inflation's under control. It's killing you. Do you know cost of living's hurting students more than anybody else? And And when we have stats like, I'm going to give you one last thing.
Very quickly.
Do you know our balance of trade deficit is the worst in the developed world? We are crap at exporting, we're not creating jobs, people are closing their businesses. There's nothing here for you. That's why 32,000 people net left to Australia last year. Under the last 3 years of national government was 600 people because we had a great country and opportunities for you and your
Scott.
future.
National still hasn't told us where that $2.1 billion of tax cut is going to come from. They need to be upfront about it.
Very quick, Natalia.
Can I ask maybe if we can add a question for Scott to answer? How are you going to work with the council if you get in? And Tam, how are you going to work with national if you get in? If it's possible?
Okay, very, very quickly. I'll give you 10 seconds each. Tam, you go first.
By being a pain in their ass every single day and making sure that we are standing up against all of the ludicrous and stupid ideas that they've got for our city.
Yeah, this is where I'm very different to the person to my left, is I aim to unify and bring people together. I've been the Vice Chair of the United Nations Legal Committee, and I believe you only get better outcomes if you actually listen to everyone and include them.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for indulging me. Thank you, team.
Ibrahim brought up National's tax plan, and I do have some specific questions for Scott, Tamatha, and Ibrahim about cost of living. So we'll go with Scott first because of that good segue there. So, Scott, the National Party are promising tax relief for low and middle income Kiwis. I had a wee play around with the tax calculator to see what that would mean for me and other students, you know, calculating it on earning $200 to $300 a week, working a couple shifts. And do you want to guess how much I'd save under the National Party's plan?
Zero.
$2.69 a fortnight. So my question is, how can you sell that to students as cost of living support if that's all you're going to do? Why should students vote for you if that's what you're offering?
I mean, and look, the National Party wants to be the party for everybody. I mean, you know, the minimum wage has increased quite a lot recently. That's been a positive development for people. And what we also need to do, though, is that a lot of the people who are leaving to Australia are people who have 2 or 3 children and can't afford to pay their bills. So basically, National's aiming at another group that's gotten nothing under the last 6 years, but actually can't afford to live. And I mean, I was Ubered here by someone who works in the government. And
but what about students? What are students going to get out of this $2.69 a fortnight?
Yeah, look, all I'm asking for students is if you want a lolly scramble that privileges students over superannuitants, over families, over others, then you hear that. That's what the Greens are offering you. But what I'm trying to tell you is you have a lifetime in this country. You have opportunities. You have families.
Okay, we're running out of time, so we'll have to move on. Ibrahim, Labor's been in government for 6 years. Over this time, rents have skyrocketed in price. Cost of living's got so much worse. But your party's flagship cost of living policy is removing GST off fruit and veggies. So by your party's own calculations, it would mean 500 grams of frozen peas are only 23 cents cheaper, and a kg of carrots is only 38 cents cheaper. This won't really make much of a dent for students. Why should students vote for you to support them financially on this policy?
Well, first and foremost, I consider myself to be someone on the left of the Labour Party, and I'm someone that will be working hard from inside to push the party to the left. Now, why should students, first and foremost about the veggie and the fruit GST thing, we need to be doing everything we can, tangible things to actually support people. People are hurting. I've heard a lot of things about, poor people don't buy, or young people don't buy veggies and fruits because they don't buy them because they can't afford them. So we need to be doing everything we can to encourage people to be able to buy their own fruits and the veggies as well. So in terms of students, the Labour government has been actually pumping student loan and the student allowance. We made first year education free, and now we know that the tertiary education sector is suffering because of the global crisis. We have made about $523 million available for the next 4 years, and we also contributed to the job cuts that have been proposed by pumping $128 million. So is this enough? No, it's not enough. We need to be doing more. We need to be supporting our students because we're talking about the future generation of leaders. I'm someone who believes that we haven't been doing enough for students. If I am elected, if you give me your job, I will be your strongest voice in Parliament. I promise that every day, day in and day out, I'll be working with you to make your lives better.
Scott, did you have something to say very quickly? 5 seconds. We're running out of time. Come on, you need to be quick.
Look, national raised per student contributions to this university greater than inflation in its government. It's been the opposite in the current government. We have to have tertiary education policy development.
We're going to
next.
get onto tertiary education
It's
later,
going to
so-
be a national-led government that does it, and you want someone in Parliament advocating for you.
Okay, Natalia, very quickly.
I just want to make a point about policies and something Scott said that I agree with. If we just develop policies for students, the inequity between students and young people will grow, which is why focusing on young people versus just students is better policy for inequity. So I just wanted to make
Okay.
that clarification.
Tamatha, you mentioned at the start that the Greens are going to do a $385 weekly guaranteed income for students paid for by a wealth tax. But Labour, your likely coalition partner, has already ruled out a wealth tax. Why should students vote Green if the policies that you're proposing won't even get across the line?
Because it's not up to the Prime Minister to rule out a wealth tax. It's up to us as the voters to say what we stand for. And a majority of New Zealanders support a wealth tax, and politicians rule things out all the time. But I think if we continue to put the pressure on, we can make it happen. And it's not a lolly scramble. If you think it's a lolly scramble, then I'd invite you to live in the life of a student for one day and tell me why it's justified that students should live in poverty and give a majority of their income to their rent, live in a shit box, get paid minimum wage and exploited by their employers, and then you want to remove any public transport subsidies that we have. A national government will make it objectively harder to live as a student in this city, and I'm standing against that. But you need you need the Green Party, otherwise Labour will not have a backbone either, because they've let us down on a number of things. They haven't brought in postgraduate allowances, they haven't
Thank you,
extended
Tamatha. I
fees
think
free.
Taylor has something to say.
Can I just say something? It is, just a clarification, it is up to the Prime Minister and Cabinet to approve a tax. I just wanted to clarify that. And I think there's a difference between knowing how to govern and knowing how to advocate.
There will be
Advocacy
Green
is
MPs
important.
around the Cabinet
just-
table.
can
I
I-
give you my word.
Right, if they get into the Cabinet, then you will decide.
Taylor?
Yeah. I'll put it to you like this. A wealth tax on paper sounds absolutely fantastic, but there's absolutely nothing stopping people who earn a large amount of money taking that money to Australia, living there for 6 months and 1 day, and then they classify an Australian tax resident, and then they pay $0 in New Zealand tax. There is nothing stopping them from turning around and breaking down their assets or their property portfolios into smaller groups, giving it out amongst their family, so then they pay $0 on it. The Green Party
Thank you,
wealth
Taylor.
tax is not rooted in reality, because there are
Thank you,
three
Taylor.
things in life: death, taxation, and tax
Good
evasion.
on you, Taylor. Thank you.
So a vote for a wealth tax is a vote for Australia, because the 32,000 people that left is going to become 60,000. The Norway example, which is about, I think, 1/3 of what's been proposed by the Greens, led Norway to lose tax revenue because everybody moved overseas and took money. One person took $40 million worth of tax. There's a 20% compliance. I tell you who'll get rich? Tax consultants and accountants, because there's like
Okay.
20% of the money has to be spent on the valuing. It doesn't work.
Natalia
Sounds
has
great.
something
Sorry,
to
can I
say.
just say
Reality
something
versus
about...
rhetoric, people.
I just wanted to tell
Judged
you
by
about-
the last 6 years of this
Let
government
Natalia
that they've
speak,
delivered
please.
for you.
Scott, thank you.
I just want to say something about the wealth tax. It won't mean that people will leave the country with their money. If it does have flaws, it will be money putting their money in trusts and LLCs. So it won't leave the country. I think we need to stop a bit with that narrative. But also the Opportunities Party, which has the most progressive tax policy next
They
to the
left in
Greens,
Norway.
supports,
They actually left and
supports
moved elsewhere.
land value tax. Scott, wealth isn't organized in a way that people just pick it up and leave. People have businesses, properties, trusts, LLCs. It will stay in New Zealand. They will just not pay the tax. I don't necessarily think people will pick up all the wealth and leave. I don't think that's how it works, and I don't think it's helpful for the debate.
You know the
either.
number of New Zealand business people who now live in
I
Australia?
know a
It's
number of
huge.
New Zealand wealthy
Hey,
people
hey,
that won't move their money.
They'll just go to Australia and register as a tax resident
No
there.
one's going
That's
to
it.
Australia.
Okay.
We want the tax money.
I think we all need to take a bit of a deep breath after that one. Okay. Public transport. We'll do a quick one. We'll start with Scott. How did everyone commute here today? How did you get up to this debate?
Uber.
Walked.
Walk.
I drove my new car.
What kind of car did you get?
I bought a car because I have 3 dogs. It's not electric. I'm sorry. Please don't lose votes because of that. I usually bus and bike. I just bought it.
I'm a notorious public transport user. I took 22 from Pipitea to here.
Okay, public transport in Wellington Central is awful. Buses are always late up to uni, they're overcrowded, they're unreliable. What would each of you do to improve public transport for students in Wellington Central? And maybe we'll shake it up, so we'll go Taylor, Natalia, Tam, Ibrahim, Scott.
I hate to say this, but we don't actually have a specific policy around improving public transport for students in Wellington. When it comes down to public transport, New Zealand First does believe that everybody should be able to get around any city in this country quickly and efficiently and without any delay. And one of the big ones that we do believe in is actually heavy rail, because when you have heavy rail, you can live further out from the cities where the rents and houses are cheaper, and then you can jump on, come into the city, and then importantly at night, when those systems are not being used, they're replaced with freight so that the city can be supplied, and then cost of living goes down.
Okay. Heavy rail, Natalia?
So we, with the teal card, you got free public transport, but we also support Let's Get Wellington Moving and the vision for that. We also commend Councillor Nash with his work with public transport. I actually don't think that it's awful. I think it's quite world leading. We have a workforce issue with the buses. We have specific routes that are shit that the council has acknowledged and they're working on. And the council has already amended a lot of the visa immigration rules to support the workforce issues. But I think if we provide free public transport for under 30s, that will support way more people. And I think we're on our way to solving a lot of the shit issues. And Labour has invested way more money in public transport in Wellington than any other government. So we just need to see that money come into fruition with the train and the ferries and the buses. So I just wanted to give a shout out to the problem that I think is going to be solved.
So our city is choking. Traffic congestion is getting worse. Climate crisis is getting worse. That's why I think the Labour government has invested a lot of money in terms of public transport. Our bus drivers were treated like a shit, and that's why we had a lot of cancellations. I was one of the people who took to the street to support this bus drivers. Then the Labour government have stepped up. Now their pay is up to $30 per hour. Huge improvement. Cancellations are down to 1%, but more needs to be done to take it down to zero. And the other thing is legislation like FPA that's going to support our bus drivers. And now with the National Party is going to, it'll be gone by the lunchtime. So let's get Wellington moving is a good start. It hasn't been moving. We need to move it fast, and more investment in our buses, more buses on the roads.
Thank you.
So one of the things that makes our public transport system unreliable here in Wellington is that we have a shortage of bus drivers. And if you talk to a bus driver, one of the biggest things holding them back is that they can't afford to live here. So affordable and public housing is a big thing that we need to do to make sure that bus drivers can live here. It's also about higher capacity vehicles. That's why we need light rail, which has double the capacity of buses and will mean that we can redeploy bus drivers throughout the network so that we have an extensive network across the city. We need to make sure that bus drivers have really good pay and really good work conditions. Some bus drivers don't even have so much as a toilet at the start and the end of their journey. We don't value our bus drivers, and we need to, and that's what I commit to as the MP for Wellington Central.
Anyone interested in public transport should read the 2013 Public Transport Spine Study, which really looked at Wellington in great detail. It's amazing. It recommended bus rapid transit. It said that light rail was unaffordable and would cost 5 times as much. I think we need to go back to that plan, because at the moment, buses did used to work really well, but we're making a lot of roading changes in the city, which is slowing buses down at rush hour. Waka Kotahi has money that it puts into these programs. As a Wellington Central MP, I want to get people around the table, talk with local communities around the city who think that some of the choices we've made have actually slowed things down, and I agree with them.
Can I respond? Yeah, so you need to get more up-to-date information than a report that came out 10 years ago, because I've talked to engineers who have delivered light rail in Brisbane, the Gold Coast and Sydney. It is entirely possible, and the reason that bus rapid transit won't work because we don't have enough drivers. So we need higher capacity vehicles, we need light rail, we need articulated buses, bendy buses, bigger buses, and that's what's going to help us, because we cannot attract the bus drivers. Bus rapid transit will not work. You talk to anybody who has actually delivered light rail in other cities, that is what we need, and it is entirely possible. And don't let anyone tell you that we can't have nice things too, and we can afford it.
Quickly.
It's nice rhetoric, but it actually doesn't stack up with the experts. And the reason is, the proposal the Greens have is a single line north to south. Our topography doesn't work for this. Our population doesn't work for this. The first significant earthquake we get, the whole system's stuffed. The problem is really around rush hour, and the bus experts, including a really great guy in the council, Tony Randall, will tell you we are trying to, we're not mastering the present, we're dreaming of the future, and the Labor government's not going to fund light rail. And the council's sinking under debt. It has this massive financial crisis. It's a dream.
Council. Okay.
Labor government hasn't said we're not going to fund the light rail. Can I also say that the only policy the National Party proposing is building more roads, which is going to make climate change worse, the traffic congestion worse, and this is primarily going to hurt young people.
In the future, we're going to have zero emissions of vehicles.
So we can't keep doing the same things and over. All of a sudden, we think the magic is going to happen. We need to be resilient. We need to be innovative. We need to be thinking out of the box. The National Party are out of ideas.
Okay. Taylor, very quickly, then Tam, then Natalia.
Look, I'll put it to you like this. With light rail, it looks like a great idea, but the question that all of you need to ask is how do we support the infrastructure? Where are we going to put the rail yard? Where are we going to put the engineering workshops? You don't see that anywhere at all in the plans. You don't see them saying they're going to put it on this
Natalia,
park or that park.
thank you.
That's what you need to ask.
Yep, Natalia, go ahead.
Oh, you just said zero emissions vehicles are the future, but you want to scrap the clean car discount. And you want to add road user charges to EVs.
Because we want to give the
bullshit.
EV charges so people can actually use cars, because we've got one of the lowest levels of EV charges in the world.
They will make
Seems pretty
EVs
stupid
more
that we haven't got
expensive and
them,
more
right? 'Cause
inaccessible.
Natalia has
No,
something
I'm
to
just
say.
gonna interfere.
Everyone, calm.
Do you want to support the Tesla drivers, the rich Tesla
Let
drivers?
Natalia speak, please.
I don't want to scrap 1.5 billion for...
I just want to say, I don't bring up Mexico City in my hometown very often, but I'm going to bring it up now because I think it's relevant. We built a city in Mexico City for cars. 20 years ago, we had this problem. Different scale, different context, yada, yada. Building cities for cars brings more cars. It's as simple as that. It's not rocket science. So what the council is doing about diversifying away from cars is a really good idea. So I just wanted to support that because it annoys me that we want to build a city for cars and we don't want more cars. We don't. They suck at all capacity, electric or otherwise.
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask all of you if you support light rail, but I think we already got the answers to that one. So I might ask the audience, see what the public think. Can I get a cheer if you support light rail? Okay, that was pretty loud. And then a cheer if you don't support light rail. Okay, one more public transport question. We'll start with Scott and we'll be very quick, yes or no. Do you support keeping the government's current policy of half-price public transport for under 25s?
Personally, yes.
But that's not your party's position, is it? Just in fairness, personally, yes, but your party opposes it.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, if I go into Parliament, I'm going to represent the people of Wellington Central. I'm going to advocate for them inside a national-led government. So I am socially liberal, I'm blue-green, I'm my own person, but I listen. I'm not lecturing to people what they think.
No, okay, that's fair enough. Okay, Tamatha, yes or no?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Do you support half-price public transport, the current policy, free for under 25s?
Of course, absolutely.
Personally, yes.
Yes, personally, and our party has a policy for free public transport for under 30s.
It's a Labor government policy, so hell yes!
Free? Anyone support free public transport for students and young people?
Yes, 100%.
Our policy is free public transport.
Yes.
Okay. Tertiary education. Big topic this election. So we'll start. Do you support the government's move to bail out the university's financial issues with the staff cuts? Scott, and then we'll go this way.
Yes, I do, and I do think that this is a nationwide crisis. We've not had policy development in the last 6 years. There's a lot of reasons why it's very problematic, and I think after this election, it's a really serious issue for people to sit down around the table. I've spoken with Nick Smith, I've spoken with the unions, I've had a number of roundtables with academics, I've spoken with students, and I do think that I could make a contribution as someone who's both been a research student, I've been an academic, and I've worked in academic management as well, and I think this is really important for your future. My entire life has been built around the opportunities that university gave me, because I came from a background where nobody had went to university, and where there was a lot of problems. So I think universities are really important for our future, for you, and for everybody in this country.
Yep, thank you. Tamatha?
Yes, and I think it's actually a bailout for the governments who have, had chronic underinvestment in tertiary education, successive governments that have had chronic underinvestment in tertiary education. As a person who was first in their whānau to go to university, tertiary education and having a degree should not be a luxury. It is a public good. Tertiary education is a public good. And when I was the VUWSA president a few years ago, I was advocating for free tertiary education, like many of the MPs sitting in that parliament also benefited from. So we have to remember that and continue to advocate for that, and I will do that as MP for Wellington Central.
I do support it. However, at the end of the day, we don't want to have a system that gets that there's a big shock or something really big happens, and then suddenly it needs to go back to the government to get another bailout, because otherwise it's not going to be delivering classes and people are going to be losing their jobs. For years, the universities were reliant on foreign students, and then COVID happened and they lost that main point of capital. So in doing so, we also need to ensure that the universities and tertiary education sector is able to take those hard hits and still be able to function and not have to then go to the government and say, bail us out or we're firing all these people.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear. It's about, do we support funding for universities?
Yeah, it's specifically the bailout for staff cuts.
Do we support it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yes, we support more funding in tertiary education, but the other thing that we support is structural change. So we need to review, Taylor's right, if we just provide money to universities without reviewing the funding model and the enrollment model and the commercialization of tertiary education, in 3 years we'll be having the same conversation, and in 6 years and in 9 years. I think the tertiary education has gone through a massive shock, and the whole thing kind of needs to be reassessed and reviewed, because we're low in enrollment and more funding won't address that. So we need to find other ways. And the other thing I would just like to say about the education system is that the Opportunities Party believes in building on good work that has already been done. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. And Te Pukenga is a really good initiative that just needs more support and more funding in order to diversify the way we're doing tertiary education, which also needs support. But all of that with funding, not just funding, because I don't think that's helpful.
So the topic, the education topic is really personal for me, because I'm someone that whose life has been changed by, this is the university that I cleaned, and I went to this uni and I graduated from here. I got a degree that changed my life. So for me, it's simple. The basic answer is yes. And now the global inflation and the economic outlook is really hurting the education sector. The Labour government tried to help by providing $500 million for the next 4 years, but also providing $128 million to save some of the proposed job cuts. But that's not enough. We need to be investing. We need to be, if we want to have a world-class education, and we want to make sure that it's a public good, and that we need more investment. So yes.
Okay. Now, I'm pretty sure you're all on the record saying you support the current fees-free program. But I want to ask if you support extending it, and we are running out of time, so we'll just do a yes or no. Start with Ibrahim. Do you support extending fees-free to other years of study?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
Do you support extending the fees-free program to your second and third year?
Like no paying?
Yeah.
So in principle, this is just me. I don't know the party policy or lines. Yes.
No, because we want to support all young people, so we rather prioritize giving free transport, free healthcare to all young people, not just students.
Yes, in principle, but I'd want to see and ensure that it is actually fiscally wise, and also see how we can better help students pay off their student loan after they've graduated.
Yes, because it is a pathway to making sure that tertiary education is a public good and more people have the opportunity to come to university, particularly those from disadvantaged backgrounds.
So it's $250 million, and I think that it should be targeted to those who need it most, because it hasn't actually helped improve accessibility for those who are from backgrounds that are poor.
Okay. Do you support increasing the eligibility of student allowances? We'll go yes or no. Start with Scott. The current criteria is means testing off the parent's income. Would you support extending that so it's more accessible?
I think it's right as it is at the moment.
Yes, and we have a policy that is costed and based on evidence that would provide a universal student allowance and remove the degrading means testing.
We want universal student allowance because it is wrong to presume that just because your parents earn $70,000 a year that they can support you when you're at university too.
Similar answer. We just want to support all young people, not just students. So no, I guess, is the more honest answer, but yes, in principle. I don't know.
Well, so when I was a student, I've seen students really struggling because their parents earned money and they were not getting enough support from their parents, so they had to work long hours, which was impacting their study. So the answer is yes.
Okay.
It shouldn't be the case.
Does anyone have a right of reply? I noticed, Scott, you looked like you were itching to give some more nuanced answers there for the yes or no's. No? Nothing to say? Okay. Climate change. How will you address the systemic issues that are causing the climate crisis, specifically to do with Wellington Central? So we'll start with Taylor, Natalia, Ibrahim, Tamatha, and Scott.
First and foremost, the best way for us to deal with it is be heavily investing into climate resilience works in the city and in New Zealand too. We saw what happened up north with the hurricane and we are still recovering up there. Every $1 million that is invested in climate resilience works protects an estimate $60 million worth of infrastructure and assets. Now, that is not just people's homes, that's the businesses, that's the farms, that's the roads, that's rail, that is everything that people need to live their life so if we continue to invest heavily in climate resilience, then when we have those disasters hit, we can quickly recover from them and get back to work.
So this is another example on where we will just keep building on what other parties have done. So James Shaw has done an enormous amount of work in this space, and what we want to focus on is improving the emission trading scheme. So we've identified that companies are using forestry to game it. So we want to remove that from the emissions trading scheme to strengthen it. We want to strengthen the Climate Change Commission that came out of the Zero Carbon Act because we think that's a really powerful tool to support, coordinate, communicate, raise awareness, and also help with climate resilience project that will require all parties to work together. It's not a problem that any one of us will solve on our own or our parties or one term. And the third thing we're doing is more funding for electrifying buses. Labour and the Greens have already done that, but we propose more funding for more buses.
So the answer for me is we need more investment in public transport. That means that we need to give people an option. If people want to ride their bikes, we should have a cycleway. So I support what the council is doing on this space. And if people want to walk, we need to have a walking ways. They need to be able to do that in a safe manner. But also, I support the climate resilience policy framework by James Shaw. I think that's going to make really good difference. So to me, it's more about being innovative, more investment in public transport so people actually can get off the cars, because now what we're seeing from the National Party is more roads means more cars on the road. That's going to kill our planet.
How do you feel Labour raiding the climate fund?
You're talking about the $200 million, but Labour also the climate change, the carbon emission had declined had been declining in the last 3 years. But if you ask me what we have done, is it enough? No, it's not enough. That's why I would be a strong voice for Wellington and also our country, because our planet is burning and we can't afford no actions anymore.
Okay, so 50% of our emissions in our city come from private vehicle usage. So the number one thing that we have to do is move people into sustainable modes of transport. We're one of the highest public transport using cities in the whole country. So we need light rail, as I said before. We need really good buses. We need safe and separated cycling infrastructure. We need to be helping people to get onto e-scooters and making sure that our streets are safe to walk on. Another big source of our emissions is building energy, so we need to look at that, and the Greens have put out our clean power payment. But it's also about looking at our waste, because a large chunk of our emissions comes from all of the food that we put into the bin that turns into methane. So we need to make sure that we have organic food waste collection in our city, and I will be a hearty voice for the necessary climate action that we need, because it is not too late to reduce our emissions and to avoid catastrophic climate change.
Thank you. Scott?
So we need to reduce our emissions to protect the planet, and we can also do it in a way that creates opportunities and jobs for people. To electrify New Zealand, we need to do a step change in our renewable energy, because at the moment everyone's commenting on our plans and saying we can't do it. We burnt more dirty Indonesian coal in 2021 than we ever have. Takes 8 years to consent a wind farm, and we've changed our rules so that nobody wants to bring the investment to build all that renewable energy. We can use renewable energy not only to electrify, but also to flatten and get ourselves to 100% renewable, and also as an export product because people want to buy it. The other thing I'll just say quickly, well, I won't say quickly.
No, sorry. Tam, very, very quickly.
If we get a national-led enact government, they're going to abolish the Climate Change Commission, they're going to repeal the Zero Carbon Act, we're going to go back decades. All of the progress that we've made to actually tackle climate change will be reversed under a national government, which will probably get into bed with ACT. They are going to introduce, reopen oil and gas exploration. So if you want a chance of actually fighting climate change, you need to vote for one of the progressive parties because these guys are going to take us back to the dark ages.
I got to respond to that because it's not right. Honestly, I'll tell you something that's really... Do you know what is amazing in this country, which is good, is that at least across Labour, Greens and National, we all completely agree on the target. The issue is, who's got the best plan to actually execute it? And I think that National has.
Not them,
and let me tell you one,
them.
hang on, let me have my voice.
Okay.
Let me have my voice. I'm going to say one last thing.
Very quickly, we're running out of time. We need to do audience
We
questions.
need to reduce emissions from cows and methane. We can do it by 30% with technology that's available overseas. It's been approved in 45 countries.
Okay, thank
because
you.
if you reduce the cows, you reduce the exports, you reduce the taxes, and we will not have money for education or healthcare.
Is the National Party going to stand up to David Seymour and say no because he's been openly saying that he's going to get rid of the Carbon Reduction Act?
David Seymour is not here. He doesn't like me, but that's okay. Audience questions. Okay. One of the audience questions, I'm just looking at them now. There's heaps there. We've got, what do you admire about the other candidates? I feel like that could be good for the collective spirit after this debate. There's a lot of hostility there, so we might
Thank you for whoever asked that.
If each candidate could say one word to describe the other candidates, so we'll start with you, Scott. If you could use one word to describe everyone sitting beside you there.
Dedication.
Oh, like per candidate, sorry. Like one word for Tam, one for Taylor, one for Natalia.
So, Tam, dedication. Taylor, I think passion. Natalia, I think, it's not one word, but bringing everyone together. And Ibrahim, I think he has a lion heart, sincerity.
Okay. Scott, confident. Taylor.
Is that a compliment?
Yes, of course. Taylor, earnest. Natalia, incredibly smart. And Ibrahim, I would say determined.
This is actually it's the same word for all of you, and that is actually kind because, and I know that sounds cheesy, we could be at each other's throats at every single debate, but we are not. We are all, before and afterwards, we all have good talks with one another. We both agree on quite a few issues. We all treat each other the way that we would like to be treated.
Aww.
Scott, patient and brave. I think standing in Wellington Central as a national candidate, I have all the power to you, brother.
But have you seen the polls?
No, I do, and incredibly smart. Tam, I only wish I had your fierceness and your professionalism at your age. You're outstanding, you're a bright, shining star, and I look forward to whatever you do. Taylor, you're the progressive young leg of New Zealand First, and I can't wait to keep talking to you about your other candidates that I just don't understand. Abraham, that coffee we had at Parliament, sharing our backstories and our immigrant stories, and just your drive and determination and kindness and everything you bring to this debate and to this electorate, we're all better off for it.
This is really a tough question. Because I've been on campaign trail with these people the last few months, and I've utmost admiration for all of them. I'm going to start with Scott. He's actually a really good guy, and I like his calmness, and he's super bright. Obviously, he's a human rights lawyer with PhD, and that speaks volume about him. But really good guy. Tam, I've said this before, and I've said it again. She's a young warrior. That's how I describe her. Tyler is someone that I can really have an endless discussion. It's someone I can go out with dinner with. Good guy, very super smart as well. Natalia, she's like a mother figure. She is so kind. I've never seen someone as kind, as dedicated, as committed, and very loving as well.
Okay. Just a few more audience questions. There's heaps there, so I have to pick some random ones, and we'll maybe do it like in 10 words or less. Vaping has become an epidemic for young people. Vape stores have seemingly no restrictions on how they market to young people. What would your government do? Scott, you start.
I think we do need to introduce targeted restrictions on vaping. The
Perfect.
evidence.
Tamatha?
So what is our policy on vaping?
Yeah, your policy or your personal view on how to control the vaping
Well,
regulations.
I've talked to local iwi actually about vaping and our smoke-free city goals, and Ngāti Toa particularly doesn't want vaping on their whenua, so I support their call for that.
We don't have a vaping policy per se, but we do believe that there does need to be tighter, realistic restrictions around vaping, because if you try to put in unrealistic ones, people will find a way around them.
We have a petition in our website about vaping, and I really can't remember the details, I'm sorry. Just want to be honest. But we do have something on our website. I'll look at it today.
So the Labour Party has quite a few policies in the last few months, and the vaping it's like a pandemic. I've spoken to a lot of parents who are really concerned about this, and because some of them are next to schools as well. So we need to ban them anywhere near schools and churches. And I think it's really, like I describe it as a pandemic. We need to be doing everything we can to protect our young generation.
Okay, thank you. I would love to ask some more audience questions, but Scott and Ibrahim do have to go. So before we completely finish, I quite liked that little audience interaction we did before with the light rail, so I might do it with the candidates to do some polling to see who's the most popular. VUWSA can't afford their own poll, they're really expensive, so we'll just see what the crowd thinks. I'll say someone's name and give us a cheer if you're gonna vote for them. So we'll start with Ibrahim from Labour. Natalia?
Your party vote.
Taylor?
All good, I want your party vote.
Tamatha? And Scott? Is that you clapping, Natalia? Okay, well that wraps it up. Students, make sure to vote, enroll, do all your details and all that. It's important, and thank you so much for all the candidates for coming along. We really appreciate you taking the time, and you've got to go. So thank you.
Thanks for organizing. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Party vote New Zealand first.
That's good. Did you enjoy that?
Thanks, Ethan. Yeah, that was good.
Pretty hostile.